Welcome to CinemaScope, a new podcast from True Story FM. Hi, I'm Andy Nelson, co-host of the Next Reel Film Podcast and Movies We Like. As a passionate movie lover, I've always relished exploring the diverse landscape of cinema. And when you look closer at the taxonomy of genres, subgenres, and film movements, you see an intricate web of interconnections and influences. This complex cinematic family tree spans only 125 years. So how did styles as diverse as the French New Wave, New Queer Cinema, and Ozploitation emerge? What cultural, economic, and technological forces sculpted these styles? And what hidden threads unite them all as part of the same fantastic art form? Those questions sent me on a journey to explore each style and trace their impacts, all to better understand the bridges between different styles. And that led me here to CinemaScope. In each episode, I'll be exploring one particular genre, subgenre, or film movement in depth, inviting expert guests to help us all better understand what defines that style, how it came to be, and what branches it, in turn, influenced on this big cinematic family tree. For example, how did German Expressionism shape American film noir? What's the difference between Westerns, spaghetti Westerns, and Brazilian Nordwesterns? We'll examine the economic and socio-political forces that birthed categories like blaxploitation, and we'll spotlight visionary films and directors key to the evolution of different styles. So join me as we explore the complex forces that shape film's evolution and appreciate the diverse creativity possible in its relatively brief history. Let CinemaScope be your guide to understanding this art form we cherish, how its genres blend, bounce off each other, and advance a rich tapestry of storytelling innovation. Together, we'll gain a deeper appreciation for this wondrous, shape-shifting medium. Our journey begins soon. Be part of this adventure by subscribing to CinemaScope today.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Soul food is over. Bless this bread, bless this meat, bless this belly, because I'm going to eat.
Who is that hoochie coochie mama with her big butt all over my husband out there on the dance floor? This is my wedding day. I'm supposed to be happy.
Everybody's happy. But we'd be more happy if we go out there and beat that hoe down.
Do you remember?
This is my family.
Y'all try my fish cakes? My plate's full.
My plate's full, too.
Miss Dean can't cook.
As you can see, we really had some good times.
Rev, this is my sister's baby. Oh, no.
This is a bliss.
But we've had some bad times, too.
I was fired from my job today.
You don't want to tell a woman, a black woman, especially a black woman, you ain't got a J-O-B.
What are you doing home in the middle of the afternoon?
Don't tell her.
Sometimes,
Why'd you come back here, Faith? What are you going to do this time?
it seems like no one's ever going to speak to each other again.
And what are you going to say, huh?
Can we talk about
Can we talk about what?
But then Big Mama comes to the rescue.
Trying to get everybody together for Sunday dinner, aren't you?
Big Mama wants me to. She knows exactly what to do to bring us all back home.
Soul food cooking is about cooking from the heart.
Andy, it's Soul Food Day.
And I am going to cook a full meal for myself after this episode, because this is one of those movies that you watch and you're just like, I need to eat a lot of food now.
Yeah, it was great. Who makes that much food for a Sunday dinner? That was so
Once
much food
a week?
every week.
That's what was my question. It's like, it's like cooking Thanksgiving every week. Like, no.
Every week.
No,
I mean,
no,
I don't cook for that many people either. Like,
Well,
when they
that's
were in
true.
full rotation, there were a lot of people, and that demands a lot
That's
of food.
true.
But
That
that's
is
a lot
true.
of food.
It is a lot
A
of
lot of food.
I hope they deal with the leftovers appropriately.
Yeah, I guess.
Don't just chuck it all.
No. Save you eat it all week. That's the whole point of Sunday dinner, is Monday and Tuesday lunch.
Exactly.
And for them, all the way probably through Thursday.
It just lasts to Saturday, and then they make another one the
They
next day.
stop eating. That's all the food for the week. All right. So we're talking about soul food. Why are we talking? This is the NAACP 1998 Image Awards.
This is the 1998 NAACP Image Awards for Outstanding Performance by an Actress in a Motion Picture. And in this film, we have two of our nominees, Vanessa Williams and Vivica A. Fox. Both were nominated, hence the reason it is part of this series. And this is the one we're closing it out.
So we're gonna play a game that we haven't played in a long time.
Oh.
And that is what do you think I thought of this movie? Because we have not talked. I have not posted anything to you. I was notably bearish on last week's movie, Love Jones. Didn't care for it. What do you think I thought of this movie?
I think that you thought it was fine. I think you thought it did its job, but I know you likely had issues with the voiceover, and you also probably caught that they mentioned the title in the film.
Oh, okay. Andy, you nailed it. But one area that you were wrong. I really, really, really enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed so much about this movie. I did not have a problem with using soul food in the film because it's defining a thing that you kind of, how do you not use soul food as words when you're making a dinner that consists of soul food and celebrating what the food is? And it's not the voiceover. We'll talk about it. I didn't hate it. I just, like all voiceovers, wonder if I could fashion the movie in my head without it and it would still be good. But generally, I loved it. I thought it was a delightful movie. And I think it did all the things that we talked about with Love Jones, right? Celebrating the fact that the Black community is not a monoculture, and yet still here are the things that they're struggling with, that the family is struggling with, that the family is not a monoculture, that they're all dealing with figuring out like difficult conversations and figuring out how to deal with, crime in the family, and how do you rationalize that when you're also trying to rationalize this person as a father figure. Like there's so many great things going on. It was edited nice and tight. It was performed in a believable way. Like I believed every character on screen. And I just had a great time with this movie. So the real question is, did I like it more than you?
You tell me.
I think you liked it. And I think you had a similar problem with the voiceover.
I think I had a bigger problem with the voiceover than you did. And watching this again after not having seen it since it was in theaters, it came back and hit me like a kiss at the end of a wet fist.
Reference acknowledged.
Reminding me how much I struggled with the voiceover and the elements of the kid, our young teller of our story as we're kind of watching it through his eyes. That was a struggle that I had with it again that made it tougher for me. There are a lot of elements that I enjoy in the film. There are some elements that I struggle with the family. In general, though, I enjoyed myself with the film. I don't think I liked it as much as you, but I do think that I enjoyed the film.
Okay, so I do have one more quibble, and that is I'm not sure. We can talk about this more at the end, but I'm not sure Vanessa Williams. I understand why she got the award nomination. I'm not sure she was the pick for me out of this movie.
Of the two, or even like what you were saying, you'd pick Nia Long.
Of the three sisters, I think Nia Long should have been in the running. And between Nia Long and Vivica Fox, like I guess I can see why Vanessa Williams got it, but she was
certainly the bigger name film.
For sure. Yes,
yeah.
But the performance was. It was great. It was a good performance, and this was a movie full of good performances.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I think. I mean, maybe since we're talking about performances, it's part of a series. We're looking at performances. I guess maybe we should just kind of continue there. So let's just kind of work through our performances as we kind of continue this conversation, and let's start with Vanessa Williams as the one sister who has went to law school. Very successful lawyer, making all the money to the point where anytime anyone in the family needs a loan, pretty much it ends up falling on her shoulders. And largely the family's expectation that she's going to be the one who takes care of financial issues as they arise. She's also the one who has lost the love and feeling with her husband. Like they've kind of forgotten how to be a couple. And so he ends up wandering toward the end with his cousin-in-law, I guess.
That's what we're calling it now, wandering, what they did in the studio. In the heat of passion, they wandered in sweat. Is what they did.
They wandered.
And there's a lot of grunting and wheezing while they were wandering together in the studio.
It was a good wander.
Yeah, they had a good wander. Yes, which was and to their credit, I mean, that was the most sort of mature relationship, right? Dealing with problems that a mature sort of longtime married couple might believably face, right?
Childless married, yeah.
Childless married couple that their relationship drifts in and out of sync and compatibility, and we're definitely catching them on an off cycle, and their relationship, as it turns out, was not able to make it. I think this is where Vanessa Williams is really, really great. I think the discovery, where because otherwise I just don't like I didn't find anything to really like about her until the overt, she's the shrew character for most of the movie. She's not humanized until the discovery of when she walks upstairs and sees through the window that her husband and her cousin-in-law are having sex, wandering. Sorry.
Her cousin, his cousin-in-law. I guess it's just a cousin. Yeah,
right.
You hit a point
they're
where
all
it's just a
cousins. Yeah, cousin 0.5. And so anyway, like that humanizes her for the first time in the movie. And so for the end of the film, we actually get her, her relationship, her being sort of emotional and reactive. And that gives her character some room, I think, to perform. And I think that's probably where she gets the nomination.
I think so. Plus, I suppose there's an element to audiences coming in knowing who Vanessa Williams is as a performer and seeing her performing something that just isn't her. That also probably, even though it's not that complicated of a performance to give, of just being that shrewish kind of character, it already feels different. And so I think to some people's eyes, it's different for her. And so that probably also pushes toward that nomination.
Totally fair, and fair that we're talking about this movie so many years after it was released. Like with that, I don't have any sense memory of the context of what was going on in the landscape where this movie was competing. And Vanessa Williams is a very talented performer, and I think she's terrific in this movie. She really is, and I think her relationship as it sort of falls apart is interesting to watch for me.
Yeah, I was just trying to look and see. She did release her album Next this same year. It came out August 97, and I'm trying to think, like, what are some songs on there that I would recognize? I don't know. Anyway, so obviously, she had been releasing albums like this is her fifth studio album that released this same year. So,
well, and did you remember the scandal?
I had forgotten it till you said it earlier, but I'm trying to remember, when did that hit?
It was earlier. It was when she was still Miss America.
She was Miss America in '84, and she resigned in nude photos in Penthouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So early '80s. I had forgotten that.
Yeah.
I was too young to know what was going on. It's probably in context of her albums and movies, like, oh, she was that one who blah, blah, blah. And that's probably the whole context that I had it in.
Yep. Yep. But I think all the more interesting just how, like, actors are not monocultures either, right? Like, she was able to do that and celebrate that part of her physical appearance, her beauty, her sexuality, and also deliver a fantastic and mature performance in this movie, 12 years later. And she's a really interesting performer, and I think very highly of her.
Yeah. No, and I think she delivers here, and the journey for her character mostly works for me as we kind of come to the end of the story with everybody back around the table.
Yeah. So Vanessa Williams is part of three sisters, and the next sister on the list is Vivica Fox.
The mother of our young boy who's narrating the story. She's Maxine. And, as the story progresses, we learn that there is a lot of tension that has been around for a long time between Terry and Maxine, because when they were younger, Terry was dating Kenny, who ends up falling for Maxine at the roller rink and ends up being her true love. They're now married with 2.5 kids. And it's just one of those things where inevitably there's going to be some long found resentment just kind of bubbling under the surface between the two, because Maxine always wants what Terry has and gets it. And so Terry has that resentment. Makes for an interesting character with Vivica A. Fox. And she plays the motherly role really well here. I enjoy her as the mom of the kids. I enjoy her loving relationship with her husband. There's a lot of interesting stuff with her. She is the second of our nominees. What did you think of her?
Oh, I think very highly of her too. And looking at her IMDb, just let me say out loud, holy cow, 239 actress credits. Like, that's a hell of a catalog that she's doing. I mean, she is very busy. At the time, it looks like she only really kind of got started in 1985, doing guest appearances on soaps and things like that. She did do Born on the 4th of July in 89, but getting into this movie, like what else was she doing in 97? In 1997, credits alone, she did Booty Call, Arsenio. Well, she was on Arsenio for 6 episodes. Batman and Robin music videos.
She talked about Batman and Robin we didn't talk about. That was the next one.
That was the next one, yeah. I owe a review to that one. And let's see, 1997 in Solomon, the TV miniseries, she did 2 episodes. Very busy 1997 for her. Just the 90s in general were very busy. I think she's such an interesting actor, and I think she was a really smart choice to cast against Vanessa Williams, because so much of the conflict exists between them, and both of them are a different kind of shrew character, right? Because Vivica A. Fox has a warm sort of maternal relationship, and I love the conversations that she has with Ahmed, like just when they're mother-son walking along the park or something like that. I really love the way they talk to one another. But when she's in the family context, she pivots and she becomes this sister identity that is her own kind of shrill, like her own kind of sort of acidic character next to her sister, because and so easily provoked to frustration, to anger between them. And so I think she makes a really interesting foil against Vanessa Williams and an interesting middle sister. I don't know, I'm an only child, so everything I get is stereotypes of what a middle is supposed to be. But I think she, according to stereotype, she plays middle very well.
I think she does a good job here as the mom. One of the elements of tension brought up with the 3 sisters is obviously when Big Mama, Irma P. Hall, falls ill and ends up in a coma during surgery when she's getting a leg removed due to her diabetes. And so a lot of the fighting revolves around the house and what to do with the house. And that it's such a key part to some of their lives, but not all of their lives. And of course, the one who's not as keen on it is, of course, Terry, who is the executor of the estate. And so wants to sell it. The other 2 sisters don't want to sell it. And it becomes this battle for them, because not just because of the house itself, but because largely of what it represents. And that's an interesting element of the story. And I think it's interesting because by the time we get to the scene where Maxine and Bird are giving her a letter from their attorney trying to keep the house, it feels like they have lost the thread of their sisterly relationship. And I guess that's kind of the point of the story, is like they, in Big Mama's metaphor, there's a hand and a bunch of fingers, and together or separate they're weak, but when you ball it into a fist, it's the strength, and that's what the family needs to be, and they're not doing that. And I think that's an interesting element in Maxine as a character, of one who, like, she really starts showing some darker sides and darker energy as she's pursuing legal issues against her sister and things like that. And so it's an interesting performance. I don't know, between the 2, I don't know. I guess I'm a little torn as far as where I land, as far as where I'd put as far as one over the other.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're both strong performances. Can we just very quickly, unless you're staring at it right now, do an IMDb game with Vivica A. Fox? Because it's funny.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I don't know her career very well. I know there's the 2 Kill Bills, and she was in
I'll give
Booty
you one.
Call, I know. And
One of them is there. Kill Bill Volume 1.
One of the Kill Bill. Okay, yeah, that's the one she's mostly in. I don't know what else she's in.
Okay. The Independence Day, 1996.
Oh, yeah.
Year before, right?
Of course.
1-800-MISSING is a TV series. She's on 37 episodes of that. I would not have gotten that. Don't expect you to have gotten that. The one that surprises me the most is another movie from this same year.
Booty Call?
Batman and Robin.
Oh.
Batman and Robin is on her IMDb known for us, but not Soul Food.
Yeah, interesting.
So IMDb, once again, broken. All right. So that takes us, I think, to Neil Long.
To Neil Long, who we just talked about in Love Jones. This is a series with a lot of crossovers.
I still love Neil Long. Did not love the movie last time. Love this movie. Therefore, love Neil Long even more.
Better hair in the last movie, though.
There was some rough hair for casting.
for somebody who's running.
Who would go to that salon? Again, we were not getting our hair done in 1997. Maybe we were just out of touch, it's not. That's not for us. The salon's not for us.
Nor are we women. And I know there's a whole world of what's in fashion at the time, and I don't remember what was in fashion in 97.
Exactly. So Neil Long is the youngest sister, plays the youngest sister, I think, well, dealing with the most sort of turbulent of young relationships. The fact that she's with a guy who's done time and can't get a job, and that sort of the stress between her and Mekhi Phifer, I think is really palpable. And yet she's still sort of struggling to kind of do the young child thing and keep everybody kind of together and support mama in times of need and those kinds of things. I think she is a real sort of beating heart for the family, and she plays this sweet younger sister to me. I really enjoy her performance here.
Yeah, I think she's fine. She's dealing with a complicated relationship from the jump, because we start the film at their wedding, and already Mekhi Phifer's ex shows up, and of course he's dancing with her, and potentially is going to turn into a thing until Big Mama kind of comes in and saves them. And so it's going to be a tricky relationship, you can tell just out of the gate. And of course, the fact that he ends up back in jail doesn't help. But I think over the course of the story, they're an easy couple to fall for, because you just want to root for them. You want to be able to say, I can see Lem figuring his things out and getting through it so that he can actually get a job. And she plays off of that well. And she's also the terrible cook. And so there's a lot of things that I think just work in her character that I enjoy. And but mostly it's just in that struggle of trying to figure out how to deal with this relationship. And just like our last movie, a character who's also making bad decisions and learning hard lessons because of them. Even though you didn't like it when they did it in the last film, but it's okay here.
Nope, it's okay here.
But she makes some pretty terrible choices that you're like, what are you doing? Seriously. And it bites her in the butt. And but luckily they, it all works out.
Well, that's funny. My middle initial is D, right? That's for double standard. I enjoy. I think it's part of what I like so much about her performance is just the way it bounces off Mekhi Phifer's performance. I think as a couple, you said it, like they're a couple you're rooting for, and I think I'm rooting for them because of not just who they are, but because of what that relationship represents to culture, Black culture, white culture. Like that's the relationship that's really pushing on, some of those relationships. Like here's a guy who made some mistakes and is trying to improve, and his family is supporting him and around because they understand like the position that he's in as a felon, trying to get a job where the people who are trying to give him the job are white and don't have the same sort of cultural understanding. And I think that's really important. If anything, this movie's a little bit soft on that part of it, right? It sort of dances on like, here's an issue, and now we're going to get back to his rage problems and send him back to jail before we even really thoroughly litigate the black-white issue. This movie doesn't deal as much with the black-white issue in terms of just the raw economy, and goes straight to crime, which is, it's a little bit of a harder pill to swallow for me, because it feels like the lowest of the low-hanging fruit. Like, put him back in a police car. That's the emotional play. But really, I'm rooting for him just to get a job. I'm rooting for him just to get past the white guy behind a desk. And instead, they put a gun in his hand in a bar. And that frustrates me because it felt like too easy. Am I nuts?
No, this is largely my complaint with much of the story. Is I feel like they take a lot of the easier choices with storytelling, with like, that's a perfect example of it. It would, and not even, I mean, sure, give him some white people to come up against as employers, but also put a black person that he has to come up with who doesn't hire him. Like, there are interesting ways to play that could have made for an interesting element that it doesn't end up just being about race, but also is just about the blinders that people put on when you see that they've checked that box that they're a former felon, and suddenly it's like, where is that line for employers? And it makes for an interesting potential case in the story to kind of give us more of that. But it's a story where I don't think they necessarily want to tell things that are heavier or darker or harder to tell. They want to tell the easier story. And that's, I think, that's why the film as a whole doesn't linger as well for me, because even by the time we get to the end, I feel like they're making choices in the story that just feel like easy ways out, as opposed to dealing with things in a little more complex manner.
Yeah, I think that is, and that is what prevents this movie from hitting like 5-star status for me. Like, it just feels like so many of the things that I love about the movie are the way they treat family and the individual performances in here. But as soon as they get to the rough edges that deal with some of the really hard issues, it suddenly feels dated. Like they were dancing around complication. Maybe it was the time, again, talking about this movie so many years later, very difficult to kind of put myself back in the headspace. Like, would they have been able to tell a story, that is any more complicated than what they gave us and still leave room for the stuff I really like? Maybe that's not possible. Maybe I'm asking for too much, but it made those sharp corners feel just a little bit hollow to me.
It's a big issue with the movie.
Yeah.
Before we talk about the spouses, let's just talk about Big Mama. Irma P. Hall plays Big Mama, supporting performance that works well. She's the glue that holds the family together, and then she's not taking care of herself. Her diabetes pushes her to need surgery, and as I've already said, leads her to a coma, and eventually she passes away. And then the family, that's the crux, because the family then has to figure out, how do we keep this family together without her at the core? What do you think of Big Mama as kind of the one holding everything together?
I like Big Mama a lot. And I think I like Big Mama a lot because this was before the Big Mama movies.
I did not even go there. And now that you've said that, I curse you for making me think of those movies in context of this one, because I'd rather this be the Big Mama that I think about. So
it should be, and it should be, right? Like this is the Big Mama. This is the Big Mama that we want. This is the Big Mama that I would love to have in my own family, right? Someone who just stands up and says, you know what? I know you all have your quibbles, and we're going to have dinner on Sunday anyway, because it's good to eat as a family. Like, she's the embodiment of I called, Bird sort of the heart of the sisters, but Mama, of course, is the heart of the family. And it really surprised me when they said they were going to cut off her leg. I was like, that is not the thing that I would have expected to come out of this movie. Like, normally there's no stop between Mama's here in the house and then Mama's dead, and we have to kind of recover. But they gave us most of the movie where things are falling apart just because Mama's had her leg removed and she had some complications in surgery. And I thought that was an interesting choice, like leaving the spirit of Mama alive and having every other character bounce off of what it represents in some way, shape, or form throughout the course of the movie before Big Mama's death. And I think that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, yeah. I like Irma P. Hall. She's fun in The Lady Killers, the Coen brothers remake opposite Tom Hanks, a much maligned film, but I have fun with it, even if it's not perfect. And, I think she represents that core, and I think she plays it well. I enjoy her in the film.
Yeah, me too. So you want to talk about the dudes?
So we got Michael Beach, Mekhi Phifer, or Mekhi Phifer, and Jeffrey D. Sams as Kenny. Yeah, what do you think of the hubbies?
Well, so Kenny, Jeffrey Sams, I really like Jeffrey Sams. I think he's an interesting guy. He's the one who has, like, he's got the family at home. As you might imagine, my favorite moment of his is when he comes in and his next child is not even born yet, but he's carrying an Apple computer and he puts it down. That was the big hero.
Like, oh, man after Pete's own heart.
Yeah,
it's like already buying a whole computer system for his unfortunate.
She looks back at him and says, you don't think it's a little early for the computer? And he says, nah. That was totally me.
It made me wonder what the other two kids already had set up.
Yeah, exactly.
It's never brought up.
So I thought he was great and really just full of sort of a confidence, but also a naivete. But and this is I would say is part of all of the guys, even Mekhi Phifer. They all felt a part of the family, even though they married into the family. They all felt a part of the family, and I thought that was a nice thing. Even when Mekhi Phifer comes back after being in jail again, he's welcomed back to the table. He's a full participant, and so I really like that. And so Jeffrey D. Sams, I wouldn't have been able to tell you, what else he was in. I don't. I can't, he's not really a face for me. And yet here he is with 63 credits and stuff that I've seen.
I've seen Waiting to Exhale, which I enjoy quite a bit. I don't know much else that he's been in that I've seen. So I think a lot of TV.
A lot of episodic TV. Yeah.
In general, I think the men play their parts well. I feel like he's given the least to do of the men. I think that he, other than poorly counseling Lem as far as what not to tell his wife about losing a job, he's really just kind of the husband who's there to have things bounce off of. There's one moment where I was like, okay, they're going to go somewhere interesting when Terry is talking to him and about like the idea, like, sometimes I wish that it was you and me or something. I can't remember exactly what she says, but she's having that moment and she's just kind of like pining for having lost him again all those decades before, which was an interesting moment to have, where we see that there is still this potential feeling that she may have lingering for him. But it never goes anywhere further than that. And I was a little bummed. I was hoping it would have gone a little further. Mekhi Phifer is given an interesting bit to do as far as the one who's the dealing with his anger issues and dealing with the fact that he's struggling to get work. But I think Michael Beach, for me, is the one who's the most interesting of the men. He's the one who has the successful law career opposite his wife, who's another successful lawyer, and is hit this point where he realizes he doesn't want that for himself. And he's been taking money out of savings and funneling it into this music career that he's trying to start up and trying to do something with, much to her chagrin. She doesn't support him at all. She doesn't come to his shows because she's, quote, too busy. And that's really kind of the thing that's breaking the two of them. And I found that to be really interesting. Like, there's, for whatever love that they used to have and connection that they had, she has lost focus of what that is. And now she's focused on what they are and is upset that he's breaking that, even though she doesn't recognize that he is needing to find something more to his life. And he wants to quit law and wants to sing. And she completely doesn't support him. And that of course, pushes him into this relationship, that this, fling that he has with his cousin, who also is somebody in the arts. And, you can see why there would be that draw, because they both have that passion for something a little more creative, and Terry just doesn't see it. So I don't know. Michael Beach was given the most interesting stuff to do for me of the men. I enjoyed him quite a bit.
Yeah, there's so much for him about, like, as you say, like about figuring out his own identity. Like everything that he does, all the choices he makes that are lousy are all about, like, well, who am I right now? Like, I don't even know. I don't know my wife. I don't know my job. I'm successful and I hate that about myself. Like, I think that's such a fascinating angle for him. He's also, I guess, maybe second to Mekhi Phifer, he's also the face that I know the most. Like I've seen the most stuff with him in it. Weirdly, maybe not weirdly at all, I was a huge fan of Truth Be Told on Apple TV Plus. I don't know if it's still coming back for a third season, but he was the husband of the hero podcaster in that show. And that was fun. Just watched him in the stupid Aquaman 2 movie. He's the flashback from Aquaman 1, but his face shows up as the father of Manta in that movie. Weird, like just flashes of his face over time. So I'm a legit fan of his, and I think he's an interesting actor and makes great choices. So it was fun to see him quite so young.
He's been in a lot, and I do like Michael Beach. And yeah, it's an interesting part. And so I don't know. I guess that's why I enjoy him in the film, because he's just given a little more to do.
Yeah.
So Ahmad,
here we go.
Brandon Hammond is the main character, you could argue, of the film. He's the voice of the film, not necessarily the protagonist, but the one through whose eyes we're watching, and has the voiceover telling us what to feel, and is kind of giving us a sense of the story.
Was so loaded.
Even though we're seeing it on screen. Okay, child performances are difficult. So I never blame a child actor for bad performances, because it's just hard as a kid, and it's either they weren't right, they shouldn't have been cast, or whatever. But I think Brandon Hammond actually does a decent job in the role. Like, I think he's carrying the weight of what he's given for this performance as this kid. And he goes through some big things. Like, by the time at the end, we're hitting the end, and it's a tearful scene.
Absolutely. I have no complaints about that little boy. I feel like I'm just standing at the edge of a cliff waiting for you to unleash.
No, I truly, I don't have any issues with the kid, with the performance. So much of my issues with this, it's not the performances. Like, I genuinely like all the performances in the film. It boils down to the script. And, George Tillman Jr. wrote and directed this. This was his first big feature. He had made a feature before this. He sold it, and then the company went under before it could get released. And so from what I can tell, that movie's never been released, but at least it gave him a little something to potentially latch onto with Hollywood and everything. And so, he was able to kind of put this other story together and get it sold. It became I think largely the direction that he went with the story, the connections that he made within the industry, as far as finding the producer that we had here with Kenneth Babyface Edmonds producing this with his wife Tracey Edmonds. They made a strong story about family, but I also think that the script shows a lot of easy outs throughout, and that's the thing that I struggle with the most. We already talked about the one with
Mekhi Phifer putting him back in the police car. Right.
But like, as we build through the story to the end, it becomes this story about our young kid. There's this whole nonsense about the hidden money that was one of those things that was just seemed kind of cheesy, with the mystery uncle hiding away in his room, and it's hiding in his TV. That was an odd element of the story, but it builds to this end where, as long as we can get everybody back together for Sunday dinner, then everything's going to be okay. And the movie gives us that. We have the Sunday dinner and everything's okay. But it's like, well, okay, but Terry's husband still cheated on her with her cousin. The cousin's still there. Like, there are still some of these issues. That's really the biggest issue. Most of the other issues, okay, so Terry pulls her strings to help get Lem released from prison. Like, okay, that seemed pretty. Like, is that really how the law works? You pull the right strings and suddenly someone gets released. I don't know. But really, my biggest issue is the whole thing centering around the relationship with Terry. Her husband cheated on her with her cousin. They're all at dinner, yet everything seems to be okay. The family's going to move forward. And so, I don't know, that's where I struggle with the film, because suddenly it's like, as long as we're all together at Sunday dinner, then, oh, big hug, we're all going to be okay.
That really hurts. Family dinners. It's like, I'd rate this family dinner 2 stars, but I'll give it a heart. Like, I think I don't know that I'm going to be able to make a case that is successful in convincing you otherwise, but I'm going to try for family dinners. That's what I'm fighting for right now, which is the movie starts with a voiceover. And we have to actually start with the voiceover because I think it's important. I don't love voiceovers. Notoriously, and I'm an antagonist for voiceovers. I don't like the voiceover here. It is a little bit absolved because this is, as Tillman has said, this is effectively his story. This is, a fictionalized version of his story of his youth. And the voiceover represents, hearing that, a young George Tillman, right? Telling the story of his young life and family and the things that he saw. And so a little bit for me, it's easier to see this as someone's fable, hearing the voiceover and absolving a little bit of the voiceover guilt. I don't think it works 100% of the time, but once you've committed to the voiceover a little bit, you kind of have to lean in and finish it. So I get it. It feels like an opening of the book, of the fairy tale of this family. And once I am on board that this is a fairy tale of a family, by the time we get to the fairy tale ending, I'm on board. It's about as believable when Uncle Pete comes down and drops the TV. It's about as believable as Danny Aiello looking at Hudson Hawk and saying, "Airbags, do you believe it?" at the end of that fantastic underrated, underrepresented film, Hudson Hawk. So it's a fairy tale for me. And the act of bringing people back together and letting dinner absolve us for 45 minutes of our trespasses is heartwarming to me. It is heartwarming right up until cardiac arrest, because all this food is going to kill all them people. But it is, I think it is an act of joy, since I've let myself believe in this movie as a fairy tale, not as a gritty tale of family on the street.
I'm not sure a gritty tale of family on the street
that was
is an accurate depiction of the opposite. Like, wow, okay.
Do you see what I did there?
Yeah,
I strawmanned you, man.
I see what you're doing. So, okay, fine. Then it does its job.
And we move on now. The dinner's fine. I will give you this. Unless you look at it as a fairy tale, you will not buy that him turning around and hitting Uncle Pete straight in the face with a fire extinguisher and having him just wipe it out of his eyes. I don't buy that for a second unless I'm in fairy tale land.
Well, yeah. And then the other thing that never, I don't think, even with the voiceover at the end of the film, correct me if I'm wrong, but is Faith's story ever resolved? Like, she's the one who fooled around with Terry's husband, and then she's at the family dinner. And was there a conclusion to her in the follow-up voiceover?
Not in the voiceover, but just in the action, right? She shows up for dinner, and he says, she tries to leave, and they say, you're still family, right? And they invite her to sit down to dinner. And that is, I think, subtextually the resolution of Faith's story.
It's an odd character. Faith is another character. Like they started doing some interesting things with the journey between her and Michael Beach's character, Miles, was interesting. the fact that it just boils down to that at the end, where she's brought in for the dinner, she's told to stay because you're family, and that's the resolution. Like, does she? I mean, I guess we kind of got a sense that she might have a successful dancing job now, or an offer, but I don't know. It just feels like a lot of these things are just the easier solutions in the story, and I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. I think that it's a sweet film. I can see why a lot of people want to put this on year after year. It's the sort of film that is probably a family favorite at Thanksgivings or holiday get-togethers, things like that. I can see why this is a film that people connect with. Just for me, some of those easy elements I struggle with. And now going back to the voiceover, because so much of it comes from this. And this was an area that I was debating, and I probably wasn't at the time, but because in context of this series, I ended up thinking about it, and the voiceover that we have in Eve's Bayou, and then we also referenced how that brought us back to To Kill a Mockingbird, the sense of these voiceovers told from a person later in life, that as they're reflecting on a period in their past. This film doesn't do that. It gives us Ahmad as a kid reflecting on this moment yesterday. I don't know how far into his future he's reflecting, but he's basically just narrating the story as opposed to looking back and thinking about it. And that's why I think the fairy tale thing doesn't work that well for me, because it's not a reflective period looking back on things. And that's, I think, part of my big struggle with the voiceover, because it just feels so present in the story to the point where there were times where I'm just like the family is sitting around in the hospital, and he's talking about how tired they are all because they've been sitting there for so long. It's like, yes, I see that on screen right now. I don't need you also telling me that. And I think because we don't get that separation in the story of the voiceover from a different place and a different time thinking back on it, it ends up feeling so narrated in a way that doesn't lend me any feel of what you're describing as kind of that fairy tale element.
I absolutely can agree with that. I had not made that connection, and I think it's because I just think Ahmad's cute, and I think he's just an adorable little kid, and I was kind of okay with it. But you're right. Now that you say that doesn't make as much sense. What I can imagine is a voiceover, done by someone like LeVar Burton, right? Who is telling me the story from a perspective of, honest reflection of his past. I can get that. Weirdly, I'm not an advocate of this voiceover. I think the movie would be better without any voiceover at all. Just tell me the story. But this one doesn't bother me as much as many others because I'm already in fairy tale land.
Well, and the other trick with it is it becomes a voiceover that also is lying, because if it's his perspective and we're getting the story from his point of view, there are a lot of times where he's not in scenes. And so how is he getting those perspectives to tell those particular scenes? Like, there were times where I'm like, okay, now because mom's having the baby, he's staying with Terry and Miles, and so we're going to get a perspective on their relationship. He's helping out Bird at her shop, and so we're going to get that perspective. And they kept that sometimes, but then sometimes they didn't. And we were so far away from any place where he would be in the story where it loses its effect of having it be his perspective.
Right. And you need to play off of it, because a voiceover that says, I heard there was a big fight at the thing, but I wasn't there, is less compelling. Right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are places where, like, I do think this is where, the final sequence has to be in fairy tale land, because any discussion of this kid with the ultimate, like, lie that he told to get people together at Sunday dinner, I just don't believe that everybody would be so chill about that when they show up at the house and realize he's been lying. I think he makes a delightful, tearful admission at dinner, and I think he plays it well, but I just think all these adults who are demonstrably damaged people in their own unique ways would not be as chill as they were with him. if you weren't in fairy tale land.
They're chill because every single one of them knows that if they say anything, they're going to be revealed as the greedy one.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes, they are.
it was like playing on everybody's utmost greed about, I'm going to split the money with you. It's like, oh, sweet. Like, yeah, I'm going to show up. It's like, it was like a strange way to appeal to everybody. And none of them were like, well, let's look at it and make sure that we can split it with everybody. Like, none of them.
Yeah.
That was like, what? Like, that was a very strange element of the story, just to really like highlight people's greed. And I guess that was the thing, like why nobody says anything, because they're like, oh, I'm complicit in absolute guilt for wanting to steal money for the rest of my family.
And the fact that there is this money, like the rumor was that there's money in the house. So stay with me here. There's money in the house somewhere, right? And they all say at one point or another, oh, that's just an old story, right?
Yeah.
There's no money in the house. How do they know there's no money in the house? The answer to that question implies that each of them in turn have at some point searched the house for the hidden money and didn't find it. It also implies that none of them searched Uncle Pete's room and maybe didn't even know he was there until the end of the movie. So this is another thing that drives me a little crazy. There's a crazy old man that's been living in a mysterious room in the house the whole time, and he only comes out as the savior at the end, the savior with the broken TV.
Yeah.
Fairy tale land. You have to be in fairy tale land.
And yeah, it was a strange thing with him for sure, with Uncle Pete and the money and everything. That certainly puts it into fairy tale land, like all this magical thing of money, which is odd also because in the scope of even having Terry be the executor of her estate in case something happens, or she has to go into a medical situation and might fall into a coma and need money to actually pay for it, to not have the secret stash of money somehow involved in the hands of the executor. It's a pretty poor system that Big Mama put together.
Yeah, Big Mama did not do right.
Maybe she knew the whole family was just a bunch of greedy little grubby.
She really just saved this money for Uncle Pete. Like, it was just Uncle Pete. Really, how much money was it? Right? What was she stashing $100 bills in the back of this TV?
It was a lot, wasn't it? Like, didn't they say? I can't remember if they did say or not. I want to say it was a big chunk of money, but maybe they didn't say.
Let's see if the internet knows. How much money was in Uncle Pete's TV? I'm just asking that. And the number one answer comes up thanks to Instagram.
Of all places.
And that answer is, y'all, Ahmad from Soul Food actually answered my question above about the money from Uncle Pete. He actually commented on Instagram in a response to somebody's question. They posted a reel saying how much money was in Big Mama's TV and Soul Food. And the actor came up and said, this is hilarious. Just know that it was enough money that we didn't have to sell the big house. No way, no how, winky face.
I like that he ends up with a winky face.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Brandon. That was adorable.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Fairy tale. Okay. I'll buy it because it's fairy tale.
Because it's fairy tale. I can't believe I'm the fairy tale advocate between us on this movie. And you're like the gritty family crime drama guy.
I'm just saying, give me Love Jones.
Oh my God, I like this movie so much more than Love Jones. I can't, there aren't enough stars.
And we talked a little bit, we talked about George Tillman Jr. As far as his career, have you followed it much? I mean, he's been keeping busy over the years. The things I think I enjoy the most of his is when he stepped into producing the barbershop films, which I just absolutely love.
Yeah. Also, we collectively really enjoyed The Hate U Give, the adaptation of the book.
That was good.
He directed an episode of Luke Cage, a show which is vastly underappreciated, I think. I really enjoyed the entire series. Other things that I have seen, I mean, I saw Notorious and Faster, and, I don't necessarily see those as like a directorial stamp of Tillman. I also saw Men of Honor, but I did not think very highly of that movie. Do you remember that movie?
I didn't either. I didn't think highly of it.
I saw it because some of it was filmed in Portland on the river, and I felt like as a resident, I owed it to my fair city to see this movie, and I've since learned that that's poor rationale to see movies.
I remember some praise for the inevitable defeat of Mr. and Pete that came out in 2013, but I
haven't
missed it.
seen that movie. Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but it's one that's on my list. I think that's of his films that I haven't seen, the one I'm most curious about.
Well, I think what's interesting about that one, and maybe most provocative about that one, especially coming off of this movie, is that it's the story of essentially, it feels to me very much like effectively the flashback story that we wanted. Like it's a coming of age story in another time. And that's kind of what we're asking for in Soul Food, is give me something to relate to from a point of reflective sort of historical compassion. And so I'm interested in it. Like, what are the lessons that Tillman has learned, about making these kinds of movies, between Soul Food and 2013 for Mr. and Pete?
It's an interesting one. It definitely was well received. And so it'll be interesting to kind of continue our conversation on it, which we should do in just a minute.
Holding my breath.
All right. We'll be right back, but first our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Ziv Moran, featuring Randy Sharp, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Andy, according to my friend Internet, this is what Letterboxd is. Letterboxd is a global social network for grassroots film discussion and discovery. Use it as a diary to record and share your opinion about films as you watch them, or just keep track of films you've seen in the past. Showcase your favorites on your profile page.
That is a lot.
You bet it is. That's why I want you to tell our fair listeners just one thing you do with Letterboxd that has changed the way you watch movies. Let them have it.
Okay, are you ready for this?
So ready.
I love lists. As of today, I have 246 lists in my account. I use them to track the movies I watch, organize them in all sorts of different ways. I track them by hand. I clone lists from other people. I use them to plan what I'm going to be watching, all sorts of things. I love creating lists. It's a fantastic tool.
Sexiest animated characters. Andy, what is this?
We love Letterboxd, and if you're a movie lover, we are sure you will too. And when you upgrade from the free account, you will remove ads and support the great Kiwi team building this amazing service.
Just use the discount code NEXTREEL or visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd to get 20% off your pro or patron membership. And it works for renewals as well. All right, here we are. It's award season. How did it do besides the Image Awards?
Oh, we'll talk about those. Let's save those for last because we're gonna go through our award ranking and decide what we think. At the Acapulco Black Film Festival, it won Best Film, tying with Eve's Bayou. Michael Beach was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Samuel L. Jackson at Jackie Brown. Vivica A. Fox won Best Actress, beating Vanessa Williams. Best Director was nominated, but lost to Eve's Bayou, and Best Soundtrack was nominated, but lost to Love Jones. The song, when you get Babyface involved, of course you're going to get a song like A Song for Mama in this, which was nominated at the Golden Satellite Awards but lost to My Heart Will Go On from Titanic. And at the Grammy Awards it was nominated but lost to I Believe I Can Fly from Space Jam. At the MTV Movie and TV Awards, Vivica A. Fox was nominated for Best Female Performance but lost to Neve Campbell in Scream 2. Very different types of performances.
Right.
And A Song for Mama was nominated for Best Song but lost to Men in Black. The Young Star Awards and the Young Artist Awards both nominated young Brandon for awards. In the Young Star Awards, he lost to Elijah Wood for Deep Impact in the Ice Storm. And at the Young Artist Awards, he lost to a tie between Blake Herron in Shiloh and Kevin Zegers in Air Bud. And, of course, the NAACP Image Awards. Vanessa Williams won Best or Outstanding Lead Actress, beating out Vivica A. Fox. And we had, it won Best Motion Picture. Irma P. Hall was nominated for Supporting Actress and won. And Brandon Hammond was nominated for Youth Actor or Actress and won that as well. So this basically won all of the Image Awards it was nominated for, except for Vivica A. Fox, because she lost to Vanessa Williams. So let's talk about the NAACP Image Awards for Outstanding Lead Actress Performance in a Motion Picture. We have talked about all of them now. We had Lynn Whitfield in Eve's Bayou. We had Pam Grier in Jackie Brown. We had Nia Long in Love Jones. And now we've talked about Vanessa Williams and Vivica A. Fox both in this. And, you know, I suppose we could throw Teresa Randall in from Spawn, our member bonus episode. Oh,
Okay.
boy. Where, thoughts on the nominees. I know you said you would probably put Nia Long in for this over Williams.
But I can totally see why they didn't, because they were nominated for 2 movies with her in them in the same year. Feels like an obviously sort of strategic play. And when you have an inarguably strong performance from both of those other 2 women in this movie, I can see why, you know, they wouldn't want to further contaminate the waters. I am such a big fan of Pam Grier's performance in Jackie Brown that it's hard for me to look at the others. I think I might have put Pam up higher, maybe, than Vanessa.
Well, I would too. Pam Grier would have won for me. And it's interesting that Vanessa won because oftentimes, maybe not in the NAACP Image Awards, but oftentimes in award ceremonies, when you have 2 performers nominated from the same film, they kind of cancel each other out and somebody else ends up taking it. That didn't happen here. Vanessa still ended up going on to win, which I guess just says how many people favored her over Fox in the voting, to the point where she, you know, won out over all of these other 4 women. I mean, I think that she's fine, but yeah, for me, it's Pam Grier absolutely would have won. It's just a very different type of film, and I suppose in the scope of, I don't know if the NAACP Image Awards follows the Oscars in the way of nominating the sorts of films that are like we'll just call them Oscar bait sorts of films, Image Award bait, the big dramas. I don't know if, is that perhaps the thing? Like Jackie Brown is kind of like the Dune of the nominees, where it's going to get nominated, but it's not necessarily going to win Best Picture sort of thing, you know?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Sure. I think you're absolutely right, and that's a fair parallel and curiosity. Like this, I think that movie is, is it perhaps impacted by the fact that Jackie Brown was made by a white director. Like I don't know what is what's the split on where favorability lies with the Image Award.
I'll tell you, Outstanding Motion Picture nominees: Soul Food, Amistad, directed by a white director, Eve's Bayou, Love Jones, and Rosewood. And so all definitely heavier, more serious films, or romantic films that, it doesn't feel as genre focused.
No, it really doesn't.
In those, like you're not getting Jackie Brown or Booty Call sorts of things getting nominated. And so I guess that's where it does have that Oscar feel, where perhaps Jackie Brown might have been our pick for best film, but it's not going to get a nomination for it.
It wouldn't get the attention. Yeah. Too bad. I think that's where I land. Jackie Brown all the way.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Oh, now we got to talk about how it did at the box office. Did it draw? Did it pull those numbers, Andy?
Well, for Tillman Jr.'s major studio debut, he had a budget of $7.5 million, or almost $14.8 million in today's dollars. The movie opened September 26, 1997, a month after Vanessa Williams' new album, opposite The Peacemaker and The Edge, which we've talked about on the show, along with the limited releases of The Assignment and The Ice Storm. Soul Food landed in second place just behind DreamWorks' first film, The Peacemaker, and stayed in the top 10 for 4 weeks. It went on to earn $43.7 million at the box office, or $86.1 million in today's dollars. That lands the film with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $620,000.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, it's good. Gives Tillman another movie. And he has made quite a career, and I like Tillman movies generally.
Yeah.
I feel good about this.
It's a warm family film. I can, again, like I've said, it's one that I can see why people would want to put it on every year. It just feels like the thing about having a story like this, where it does take the easy way out sometimes with some of the story elements, it makes it very easy for kind of that family comfort food, I guess you would say. And so to that end, I can see why it works.
Well, and also, I mean, here we are talking about the way the movie works for us. The messages in this movie are pretty universal, right? Like in terms of just the joy of sitting down with family, or I should say the aspirational joy of sitting down with family. What this movie showcases is something that I think probably a lot of people can relate to, whether or not they have, strong microculture family vibe, like whether or not they sit down for family dinner. So I think it's got value. I really, really enjoyed my time with this movie.
I think it's fair to say that Tillman did a great job of also making a film that feels universal. It doesn't feel like I don't feel like I can connect with this family because it's an African-American family. Like, I think it's a human story. And that's what I really enjoy about that element of it. Like, it just feels to that end, it feels authentic, and like he's telling a story of real people. Right.
Yeah, no, I liked it. I think this was a great series. And also we watched Spawn.
Spawn. All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings, but first here's the trailer for next week's movie, kicking off our next series, looking at the 2002 Film Independent Spirit Awards nominees for Best Cinematography, Corey Maccabee's The American Astronaut. And if you're interested in checking that one out, check on YouTube. It's a tricky one to track down.
Guess who this is?
The boy who actually saw a woman's breast. He's a birthday boy. Kills without reason.
You ready, Cat? Hey!
You know what I got the other day, Pete? Stephen King's latest. Want to borrow it?
Do you know who you're talking to?
What do you mean?
Andy, when's the last time I read a paper book? It's been like decades. I would much rather use Kindle, or better yet, Audible.
What am I thinking? I don't read paper books anymore either. I am an audiobook guy all the way. For those of you looking to listen to the books behind the films we talk about here on The Next Reel, get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at thenextreel.com/audible.
It's the way to go. Season 13 is a fun one, looking at various awards categories over the decades, from Best Picture nominees to cinematography,
adapted screenplays to visual effects, and a good number of movies we're discussing started out as books or plays that you can read now on Audible.
1940 Academy Awards Best Picture nominees Of Mice and Men and Wuthering Heights.
What a great way to start this season. In other series, we also covered The Killers, based on Hemingway's short story.
A Place in the Sun, Strangers on a Train, A Streetcar Named Desire.
Beckett, A Boy and His Dog, The Princess Bride, Congo.
The Scarlet Letter, Jackie Brown, The Woman in Black.
So many great movies from so many great sources, and they're all on Audible.
Producing this podcast is a lot of fun, but takes a lot of time. We've dropped the dynamically inserted ads because they're so annoying and have no connection to our content.
Plus, they just jam those things in wherever they see fit. We listened to you when you said you didn't like them, so now we're directly appealing to you, our dear listener. Please consider an Audible subscription to help support The Next Reel and our family of podcasts.
I have been using Audible along with my family for decades now. I love it, and I have read hundreds of books through it. I couldn't be more pleased with their service, and I know you'll love it too. Head to thenextreel.com/audible and get your free trial. It really helps us out, and you have a world of over 200,000 audiobooks open to you.
So much great material available. Dive in with a free 30-day trial at thenextreel.com/audible.
Start listening to amazing audiobooks of your favorite movie source material with your first free audiobook today. That's thenextreel.com/audible. Letterboxd, Andy. It's Letterboxd time. And I'm worried that this is a two-heart quibble movie for you, but especially after Love Jones last week, that you and I are just watching different movies week after week. You can find us Letterboxd at thenextreel.com/letterboxd, and that's where you can find the show. Andy, what are you going to do?
I enjoyed this movie. I mean, I think that there's a sweet element to the story. I do have some issues with some of the way that things are dealt with, but on the whole, I still enjoy it. So I'm going to say 3 stars and a heart.
3 stars and a heart. Andy, as if in reaction, nay, retaliation to you, I offer 4 stars and a heart.
4 stars and a heart.
This is a 4-star movie for me.
Okay, well, that averages out to 3.5 stars over in our Letterboxd account, which you can find at The Next Reel. You can find me at Soda Creek Film, and you can find Pete at Pete Wright. So check us out over there. So what did you think about Soul Food? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we're going to be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd, give it, Andy.
As Letterboxd always do it.
Okay. I keep finding reviews I want to read, and they're about points. I'm going to go to one in particular, but all right, let's do yours, because you have one that's a point you wanted to bring up that we didn't talk about. What do you got?
Well, yeah, it was an interesting one by Benton Tarantella, who says, the kid narrates that Aunt Terry called up Cousin Blimp because she, quote, thought, end quote, Lem was beating up on Bird and that it was all a big misunderstanding, but Lem was very clearly throwing Bird around like a rag doll. So this kid is kind of an idiot. And it's definitely an interesting point because, one, why do you call up Cousin Blimp and say, but don't bring a gun? Like, that's not the cousin you call to resolve a situation. Like, that just seemed dumb on Terry's part from the jump. And then, yeah, it's one of those things where, okay, so that was part of the resolution between Lem and Bird when he's just like, but I didn't hit her. I pushed her a little bit, but I didn't hurt her. But we were in the room, and it was
hard.
It was a hard pushing.
It was the hard push.
It was pretty not nice, and so that was that was another thing that I think they coded a little too easily over.
Certainly, it was a push that was different than wandering. Am I right? Like, we've talked about that. It was a different kind of wandering. All right, here we go. I have one. It's just a heart from Joe 2.0. And I bring it up because, again, it's another point that I don't think we made. And it's one in the Letterboxd reviews that's talking about this angle that isn't a joke. There are a number of reviews that take this as a joke. And I'm not going to read the whole review because it's very, very long. It was really interesting to watch this after just this week, listening to Black advocates and doctors decrying soul food's health implications in the Black-authored food industry doc, They're Trying to Kill Us. Several points made there show up almost verbatim here. Diabetes is disproportionately present in Black American communities, for which many lose limbs. Sometimes a family member who's lost a limb to diabetes can be found in a room people hardly enter, and that some folks don't make the connection between their life-threatening diabetes and the food they eat that causes it. Soul Food, the movie, isn't fighting that fight, but this was perfect movie programming for me this week. So the review goes on, and obviously this review is very personal, and they mention other people and that this reviewer knows. I think this is interesting because the movie celebrates the joy of bringing humanity together around this shared table, and doing so in the spirit of ignorance is bliss, right? Like they never once made that connection to the fact that Mama is cultivating a food culture in the house of eating stuff that is actually causing her to lose her leg ultimately. And all they say in the hospital is, you're just not watching what you're eating, Mama. Like, well, You're all in it. You are all complicit because you are allowing food to absolve you of the emotional debts that you all carry with each other. And I think that is a really interesting sort of background, and it's pretty subversive in this movie. Like, I don't know if it was intentional to actually, it has to have been intentional. It has to have been intentional that Tillman includes the fact that she has diabetes and is losing her leg as the unspoken truth of the family, as yet another way that the family is kind of broken as a result of this cherished moment together. And I think that might be one of the most fascinating angles.
But again, like, they could have dealt with it a little bit more. Like, maybe at the end they're, having some leafy greens, and like there is just a little more.
That's
like
your
they're still frying catfish, and like they're still not eating healthy by the time we get to the end. They have not learned their lessons over the course of this story.
And that is the downer ending that you should have wanted all along. They've learned nothing.
I want to hear the voiceover from young Ahmad, far in the future, sitting in a wheelchair because he has no legs.
Because he's lost both his legs. Okay, thanks, Letterboxd. Maybe for nothing, but thanks.